Alright, so there are two different new Nintendo Switch reports floating around online that are pretty interesting for different reasons. The first of which has to do with a massive gaming CEO, which, to be fair, I guess they haven't pumped out a ton of games, but the budgets that they have, knowing who this is part of, yeah, you're gonna recognize why they might be a big deal. They're claiming in a recent interview that they will indeed be gearing up major support for Nintendo's next-gen hardware. It also sounds like they might not have an active development kit at the moment, but we'll unpack all the implications of all of that. Then the part two of today's video has to do with the fact that Nintendo might have brand new requirements in place when it comes to what they are telling their third-party manufacturers in terms of official controllers that they are going to license, the kind of features that have to be supported in these controllers, which might have big implications for what we should expect for some of these Switch 2 games. And as people speculate, what will the big gimmick potentially be for this next gen console, if there even is one? We might have a little bit of a peek at new information to support some interesting theories around that, so we'll get on the same page with all of this info. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And we have to first kick it off with an interview that recently went live from IGN and the head CEO of Amazon Games, who, of course, so far when you think Amazon Games, you don't think of a lot of major flagship franchises or anything like that. They did recently announce a game that will be coming to the current Switch, but obviously we might be more interested in them in the future and what they are gearing up to do with Nintendo's next gen hardware. So you can first see this following article over on Nintendo Everything, which reads, Amazon Games planning Switch 2 support. When Nintendo is ready to come out with the Switch 2, it looks like Amazon Games will eventually be there with games. Christoph Hartmann, the company's vice president, recently pledged support and shared some other interesting thoughts about the system. Hartmann made it clear in an interview with IGN that Amazon Games intends to make titles for Switch 2. However, he believes it'd be best for Nintendo to avoid rushing hardware, even if that means waiting another year. Hartmann indicated that most third parties should be fine waiting, given how teams can rely on other gaming systems for the time being. The exact quote reads as follows, "Yeah, we obviously plan to develop games for it, and I can't wait for it to be out. I mean, honestly, I'd rather have them wait a year and get it perfect than rush it to the market, and then we all complain about what doesn't work. Switch has been such a fantastic product, I can wait another year if I have to. And from development, I think most non-Nintendo developers are exclusively doing titles for the Switch. They're always part of a portfolio mix, a platform mix, just wait." Now, obviously, we don't have a clear read on what type of games Amazon Games would bring to the portfolio of new Switch 2 releases, but just from the sounds of this interview, it sounds like obviously this vice president is very much a fan of the current Nintendo Switch and is not in a rush to get into development for the next gen console. It also sounds to me like because Nintendo more than likely doesn't have a super established relationship with this company, that maybe they don't have a development kit in their hand, and hence they're okay with this taking longer behind the scenes in terms of Nintendo's ultimate release of this new hardware. Because I mean, they just recently announced King of Meat for the current Nintendo Switch hardware, and it seems like Amazon Gaming is one of those projects that's kind of slowly ramping up in the background, but by no means is an established force within the industry, and it's not going to lead to massive AAA third-party titles support day one for Switch 2 at this point in time. And again, just these comments to me sound like he's a fan of the Switch, maybe trying to get his presence known, that he's very interested in Nintendo's next-gen hardware, but likely isn't being brought into the fold with like those GDC level surveys we've seen sent out, where developers, hundreds of them, even thousands at this point, are reporting that they're actually working actively on Switch 2 games. Amazon Gaming probably not in that conversation, so an interesting tidbit of information nonetheless, that we have yet another third-party dev that's super interested in Nintendo's next-gen platform, and I think that that definitely expands out even at a broader level than we've seen it do even with the current Switch, because a lot of devs, third-party, and publishers, all of that stuff, they were very much betting against the Switch and thinking that it wouldn't be the smash hit success that it is. So I'm betting that day one, after you sell over 140 million units of the current Nintendo family of systems that we have on the market with the Switch family, yeah, there's going to be a lot more eyeballs and a lot more interest on getting a dev kit for this thing as early as possible, knowing that Nintendo is following up on a super successful generation that will likely have a lot of fans of the current family of systems upgrading to the new hardware. So again, an interesting report for Switch 2 and the future development of games, and there's not really too much here to go off of other than that. But the part 2 that I do want to discuss in today's video has to do with some interesting requirements from a controller perspective and what Nintendo is supposedly asking their partners to include as a mandatory requirement when it comes to the type of technology that is in any officially licensed third-party Nintendo Switch 2 controller, as you can see this following post over on the R Gaming Leaks and Rumors thread, which reads, in a recent episode of the Bonus Level podcast from the Power Unlimited website, Nintendo's next console ended up becoming the main subject thanks to a conversation that was reported by editor Martin when commenting on accessories for the successor to the Nintendo Switch with a manufacturer present at the event through its representatives. Omitting to identify the manufacturer at the request of the same as it is a longtime partner of Nintendo in production and distribution of licensed controllers, it was said that Nintendo has made it mandatory that the next controllers for Nintendo's new hardware will be able to use motion sensors through gyroscope. The feature is used by a variety of games on the current Switch, but manufacturers claim that it's the first time that Nintendo has requested this type of requirement for the manufacture of new licensed accessories. So you can read into this a number of different ways, but it is very clear that Nintendo might be pushing their third-party manufacturers a little bit more in the direction of having a unified feature set in their controllers, and maybe that is due to the fact that they actually have some plans to implement gyro and motion type controller options in more of their games than they have on the current Switch. That's obviously not confirmation that that's the case, but it is a plausible idea tied to this kind of requirement from third-party accessories and the essentially the Power A's of the world and different companies like that sell third-party Nintendo Switch accessories right now, but you see with the official Switch licensed logo and everything on there, it's kind of one of those things where they're a direct partner for Nintendo Switch and their accessories, but they don't have necessarily all the same features that you would expect from a first-party Nintendo controller. Well, with this kind of requirement in place, there's not a chance that you could pick up any third-party officially licensed Nintendo Switch 2 accessory and not expect it to have at least gyro motion as a requirement. Maybe that's for games like Mario Party Jamboree coming up, which is of course for the current family of systems, but you could argue the idea that there's going to be more games and more ideas based around motion, and Nintendo wants to have that as a core requirement for all of their accessories in the next gen hardware, and that's kind of what's being claimed here. But these are two different reports, just also kind of adding fuel to the fire that Nintendo is no doubt ramping up things behind the scenes and getting a lot of communication laid out to their partners, whether that be around new game development or whether that be around new controller requirements. And it seems like gyro and motion based controls is something that Nintendo will focus on here. Now, I don't think this means we're going back to the Wii and everything's going to be some kind of waggle motion or all motion based controls in every single game. Clearly Nintendo's own wording with the successor to the Switch very much implies that it will be similar to the current Nintendo Switch hardware we have today, but just the natural evolution and the more powerful version of that Switch hardware that we have now. And I think this only further backs up that Nintendo is really taking it seriously, that if you're going to be a licensed partner with them, they want a specific feature set in all of their controllers, and it's not indicative of them going heavy back into motion controls, but rather just an extra requirement that they can have as a standard practice with all of their various partners that they have built up over the years and going into the Switch 2's launch. So that's where I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video, what you make of both of these different reports. What kind of games would you like to see Amazon Games, a third-party publishing studio that's claiming to work on games for Nintendo's successor hardware, ultimately bring to that platform? And what do you think about this supposed requirement of Nintendo requiring gyroscope motion sensing in all of their third-party accessories this time around if they're going to be officially licensed by Nintendo? So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.